Most people think the bigger your business gets, the harder it is to run. And in some cases, that is true. More people, more systems, more complexity. But on the flip side, we have more people working on siloed places of the business. You have more data to compound, you have more leads, and you have lower statistical variance. And for that reason, my wholesale business, as it's grown, has become easier to run. I've realized that it's easier to run a $6 million a year business than it is a $600,000 a year. And over the next 5 or 6 minutes, I want to explain exactly why it's easier to run a larger business than it is a smaller business, and how you can break through as a wholesaler from a small producer to a much larger company. And the best part is it gets easier as you keep going. And the reason comes down to one thing. That is the law of large numbers, and conversely, the law of small numbers. The law of large numbers is essentially, as you collect more data, variance normalizes. Said simply, swings become less significant. The bigger the sample size, the more predictable the next outcome becomes. Now, here's where this is important for small wholesalers. The law of small numbers is the inverse. When your sample size is too small, your variance is extremely high. 1 month, you might make $100,000 in revenue and think you're on top of the world and that you're the best wholesaler on the planet. The next month, you might drop back down to where you lose money. That variance is massive. 1 week you have a great sales week. 1 week you have a terrible sales week. And I want to break down the exact math of how this impacts you psychologically and how we break through it. So the key point here, how you can make more money from this video, is realizing that oftentimes your strategy isn't wrong. You simply need to compound more data and let the math play out to adjust for variance. Patience is one of the hardest things to learn in business, but it's crucial if you want to grow your income rapidly. And the truth is, most wholesalers simply quit before their upswing. Now, I want to show you on this whiteboard here real quick. I'm going to compare a big wholesaler versus a small wholesaler. The big wholesaler is going to be spending $8,000 a day on ad spend. I get this number because this is roughly where my real estate wholesaling business is today. On the other side, the smaller wholesaler is going to be spending $8,000 a month on Google ad spend. At first glance, you would say the big wholesaler has a much riskier business because we're literally spending 30 times the amount on a monthly basis, which there is credence to that. We of course are spending more money, which would increase risk, but I want to show you what happens with the data because the business spending $8,000 a day is able to compile the same amount of data as the small wholesaler over an entire month. And the reason that is so important in any business, but especially in wholesaling, the statistics and the data and the success do not reveal themselves after the first $8,000 in marketing spend. And this really goes for any channel in any business. The quicker we can compress the timelines, the easier it is to sit through the pain. Now, I'm going to walk you through an exact mathematical scenario that just happened in my business about 2 weeks ago. On Monday, we spent $8,000 in ad spend, and we didn't get a single contract. So we're going to put a 0 in the contract column. The next day, another $8,000 of ad spend, 0 in the contract column again. Day 3, $8,000 in ad spend, 0 in the contract column. So I had spent close to $24,000 over the course of 3 days without a single contract to show for it. Did I feel levels of panic? Of course. Was I frustrated? Without a doubt. Was I stressed going to sleep? You bet. The difference is I knew the data was going to normalize. And so all I had to do was go to sleep on day 3 into day 4. And on day 4, we spent another $8,000 in ad spend. That day, we got 11 contracts in a single day. On day 5, we spent another $8,000. 6 contracts in that day. So over those 5 days, I'd spent $40,000 on leads and generated me 17 contracts. That resulted in a cost per contract right around $2,300. Now, to be clear, days 1 through 3, I had a negative return because I hadn't got a single deal on $24,000 of ad spend. Here's what's important. On the 11 contracts that we signed on day 4, 4 of them came from day 1, 2 of them came from the second day, and 3 of them came from day 3. This is what compounding data looks like. Now let me show you why it's psychologically harder in the smaller business even though you're spending the same amount of money. So it's going to take 30 days to spend that same $8,000. So let's say the same exact math plays out, where 1 month we spend $8,000, 0 contracts. Next month, $8,000, 0 contracts. Month 3, $8,000, 0 contracts. Now we spent the same $24,000 and we don't have a single contract. I would argue this is actually much harder to have happen because you're going 90 days to experience the same level of data. So the exact same math plays out. The same amount has been spent, $24,000 versus $24,000 in both businesses with 0 contracts. This wholesaler, the small wholesaler, has to sleep 90 times, going to sleep with anxiety, panicking, nerves to get to month 4. That month 4, they're going to sign the same 11 contracts as this business. The cost per contract and the business health is actually identical. The psychological difference is that the big wholesaler only has to go to sleep on night 4 or 5. The small wholesaler has to wait another 30 days. So the point of this video is not just to tell people to spend more. The point of this video is to understand that patience is the key. We need mathematical averages to play out. And this goes for any marketing channel, not just my current clients. If you're running cold calling, running SMS, you may have just not stuck with it long enough or spent enough money to see the results play out. The other variable that occurs here with a small wholesaler is they'll start rebuilding campaigns instead of letting the data normalize. Because of that psychological difference, what will occur? A smaller wholesaler will start saying things like, my marketing's broken, or I have to switch strategies, or my agency isn't working, or SMS stinks, or PPL stinks. And they'll switch from Google Ads to PPL to SMS. Or they'll start blaming their sales team, saying they have a closing issue. All of those may be the case, but in this specific instance, when we're comparing just variance in data, you may not actually have a problem. Of course, you can always get better, but you may just need to let things play out. This is something that I help some of the biggest wholesalers and scaling wholesalers at SM3 understand. Sometimes, as hard as it is, the best move is not to switch channels. And I frequently turn down people from working with SM3 who want to spend money with us because I'll say, hey man, you're not in a position to stick with this long enough because of your cash reserves. Why don't you stick with your current marketing channel, which again, that means not collecting money from this person. Sometimes the best move is not to quit. Sometimes the best move is not to change strategies. Sometimes you just need to let things play out, do more follow-up, because in wholesaling, especially with Google Ads, if you think you're only gonna lock up the leads that come in the same day, you're sadly mistaken. To me, that's table stakes. Of course you need to lock up the hot leads. If you wanna be an average wholesaler, and break even, of course, you gotta lock up the things that are easy to lock up. But where the big wholesalers make all of their money is they have great drip sequences. They have amazing, great follow-up processes. They're gonna call all their historical leads for the last 6 months or a year. For this example that I showed you here, because of these 11 leads right here, I locked almost all of those 11 up from previous days of ad spend. For the small wholesaler, this same thing occurs, but they're locking up deals from 1 or 2 or 3 months ago. Now, for the smaller wholesaler, of those 11 contracts they lock up month 4, 5 might be from month 1. 2 might be from month 2, and the remainder might be from month 3. Now, I want to show you one more thing here for the small wholesaler. Now, I'm going to use the same example. $8,000 of total spend. The big wholesaler, in this instance, is getting 80 leads a day. Small wholesaler is getting those same 80 leads just over the course of 30 days. Each day, another 80 leads is added to the big wholesaler's pipeline. Great, right? Obviously, this is all making sense, but what's happening is when we're having good drip sequences, those 80 leads start compounding quicker, and then your drip sequences hit the next 80. And so the lead flow is actually identical. It's just taking a different amount of time to compile the same compounding effect. So for the small wholesaler, they're stacking those same 80 leads after another month. The key is sticking with the same marketing channel long enough to let the leads that came in 6 months ago start hitting. And that's where your return on ad spend really starts to compound. We looked at my wholesale business, and the average deal we closed in 2025, the lead came in more than 94 days before we signed it. And we had multiple transactions throughout the year that entered our CRM more than 12 months prior, which means we had over $1 million in revenue of closed deals that came in more than 1 year before we closed them. The lesson here for anyone who's scaling up is to stick with the system long enough to let it compound. Sometimes the right move is let's turn down your budget slightly. Maybe we just need to let the historical leads we already paid for start rolling through. Let the data catch up, as we'll say. So especially in Google Ads, you're not just buying leads, you're buying data, you're buying people who consented to allow you to follow up with them. This is the big thing that SMS and cold calling get wrong. Typically, they don't have TCPA compliance. What we're doing on the Google Ads side is we're building thousands of leads that are saying, hey, I'm at one point willing to sell. The key is having really good drip sequences, really good culture on your sales teams. The final thing I want to leave you with is how we adjust our expectations to increase the likelihood we succeed. This is not just saying big wholesalers have an advantage. The point of this video is that big wholesalers think differently. Now, this is not me just saying that big wholesalers have an advantage. What I'm showing you is the data is actually the same. It just takes a different amount of time to accumulate. The point of this video is showing you the way big wholesalers think, which will then increase a smaller wholesaler's likelihood to succeed if they use that line of thinking. Most wholesalers quit because their expectations are wrong. They thought it would be cleaner. They thought it would be simpler. They thought you put money into Google Ads and the next 30 days you get $4 back for every $1 you put in. Guys, if there is any business that would be that easy, everyone would be multimillionaires. The reason being a multimillionaire is coveted and respected is there's no simple way to do it. I often see new wholesalers thinking they're going to spend money on leads. Those wholesalers think that every single lead is going to be an easy lay down seller and it's going to be smooth. They think they're not going to have to work hard on the transaction management process. They think they're not going to have to learn how to build badass sales teams. They think that all of their transactions are just going to get to closing. That is simply not the case, and I'm not trying to discourage anyone. So what we need to understand is wholesaling is lumpy. Transactional businesses are lumpy. Real estate closings are lumpy. As we showed you in this example, you might have 2 months in a row where you're at 0. And then month 4, you might make more money than you've ever made in your entire life. That is the difference in our business model. So the goal is not to avoid variance. The goal is to learn what to expect, which makes the variance more tolerable. And in turn, that allows you to hit your upswing, which is then how you build each next phase of your business. Now, for final clarification on this video, I do not want people to think they should just turn up their ad budgets and spend blindly. You need to work on your operations. You need to work on your acquisition system. You need to dial in your scripts. You need to make sure you're bulletproof. You need to improve your transaction management system so you don't have seller back out. You need to make sure you're getting 1 and 2 transactions closed if you're locking them up. That's a 50% close ratio. You need to make sure you understand how to underwrite. And side note, if you have bad underwriting, everything else in your business is going to blow up. The point of this video is showing wholesalers that big guys want to get more spend, and it's not just to make more money, but to normalize the time it takes to receive the correct data back into the business. I rarely review my ad account on less than $75,000 to $100,000 to spend. So I'm not just saying spend more money. What I am saying is once you believe your fundamentals are correct, scaling is the solution. So if you're a small wholesaler, the takeaway here is not that you need to compare yourself to big guys, and it's not to complain that you can't spend more on your ad budget. The takeaway is to zoom out and understanding this takes years to build a successful business in any industry. So if you're just starting and you're a couple months into your marketing channel, don't panic. It's normal. If things are breaking, even after 90 to 120 days on whatever marketing channel you're doing, you're already ahead of most because you've stuck with it longer than most people ever will. If you're running the same marketing channel for 6 months, you're already ahead of 90% of other business owners. Let alone, if you can make it to a year with a single marketing channel, you will start seeing your data compound. Do not judge your business off just 1 week of ad spend or even 1 month. Don't judge your business off a couple of leads you get. Don't judge your leads off of a couple of closings falling apart. One, that's a transaction management problem and actually has nothing to do with marketing. What we need to understand is we need to ask better questions. How many leads did we generate? Is our cost per contract over the last $50,000 of spend solid? How many qualified opportunities did we get from that same $50,000? How many contracts did we get signed? Start zooming out and look at your business on a quarterly basis or even a 6-month basis. And data and your brain will normalize. Your panic and psychological fear will reduce. I want to make a quick disclaimer. I make these videos because I enjoy educating the industry and believe financial transparency goes a long way and most importantly can help other entrepreneurs make way more money. But to be clear, building a business to make $1 million in profit is exceptionally hard. I don't know the exact statistics, but about 1 or even 0.1% of all businesses are ever able to do that, let alone year after year. So I make 0 guarantees to my clients. I make 0 income claims. I am simply showing you what I have learned in my own real estate wholesaling experience. If you want to succeed in any business, it's going to be exceptionally hard, and understanding that is very important. So guys, if you like this video and you like learning about this tactical real estate wholesaling content, I made a video right here breaking down exactly what my business looks like and how we help others scale and how I'm able to close a $30,000 wholesale deal every 30 hours. So click this video here if you want to learn more. If you want to get notified every time I post, click here to subscribe to my YouTube channel. Thank you guys, and I'm hoping you learned something about real estate wholesaling here today.